Hi, everybody. Welcome. Very glad to have you here. My name is Dorothea Salo, and I teach at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Information School. I'm also an alum of the program, and I've been here for donkey's years. So my email is up on the screen for a reason. Please feel free to use it if you have any questions about me or about the program. So my talk today is, whoops, is advancing slides too fast. Sorry about that. Taking arms like Hamlet against a sea of chatbot sludge. And let me just remark that there appears to be actually an emerging term of art for this, a piece of jargon, and it is actually chatbot slop, which is fine, right? And in future, I probably will just say chatbot slop because I can expect people to kind of understand me. Um, but I like the word sludge. It's a good word. It's an expressive word, so it's the word that I chose to use today. So, how's Google working out for you lately? And please feel free to throw some emoji in the chat in response to this question. Seriously, how's Google doing? Are you noticing maybe that current results not so great? Are you noticing that it's pointing you to these websites full of sound, well, HTML, and fury that aren't actually helpful, that don't have anything that's useful to you and answering your question and meeting your information need, with lots and lots and lots of ads? Speaking of ads, really recommend browser ad blockers. Um, uBlock Origin's good. Privacy Badger is good. If you're on mobile, I'm a fan of Firefox Focus. Um, and I say this because I wear a lot of hats in the iSchool. I always have. And one of my hats actually is teaching information security and privacy. And it's with that hat on that I tell you ads are not just annoying online, they are increasingly becoming a security risk, right? If somebody wants to phish you or get you to install malware on your computer, what's the easiest way to do that? Buy an ad, right? So yeah, ad blockers, very good thing. Maybe you're not using Google anymore, right? I haven't used Google, at least on a daily basis, in a very long time. I stick with DuckDuckGo because at least I know that they're not going to sell my searches to data brokers or the man or anyone else. But that doesn't mean their results are any better, unfortunately. And I have noticed the same result degradation on DuckDuckGo that a lot of you are saying in chat that you have been noticing on Google. And I want to validate what you're saying here. This is not just you, it is really happening. And if I were going to point the finger of blame, um, I would point two fingers actually, and I'm going to be very careful about which ones they are. But one finger would be pointed at web advertising, all right, and the other would be pointed at AI chatbot sludge. So I hate talking about web advertising, but we kind of have to understand at least a little bit about how it works as context here. Web advertising is a deeply selfish, harmful, corrupt industry that is just riddled with fraud. It is the source of and the chief rationalization for just untold amounts of surveillance, mostly online, but starting to extend into the offline world. And it is also, on the other hand, the source of much of the money that keeps like non-e-commerce websites available at all. So it is also the source of a horrible dilemma, right? How do we fund the good stuff on the web while ditching this horrendous, horrendous industry? And I wish I had an answer. Honestly, I do. But unfortunately, I don't. For now, we're kind of stuck with this huge, huge mess of a web advertising industry. So here's the bit you need to know about how web advertising works. When you see an ad on the web, it is not that the website you're seeing the ad on has necessarily chosen to place that particular ad. Now, the website isn't completely helpless here. They can do things like set standards, right? They may say, like, no porn ads on my site, no gambling, no politics, stuff like that. They may also be able, if their user base complains about an ad, they may be able to say, this ad needs not to appear on my site anymore. And that can happen. But that's really as much control as they typically have. Instead, the way this usually works is through a process called real-time bidding. And, boiling this way down and explaining it from you, the website visitor's point of view, here's what happens. You visit a website. The website does its level best to re-identify you, figure out exactly who you are. And of course, it phones back to the mothership with information about your browser, any other information it can gather about you, identifiers if it has them, right? If it has an identification cookie or a browser fingerprint or some other way to identify you specifically, it will totally do that. And so it sends that plus the new information that's involved in your visit. Hey, you visited this site, you came from Google, you clicked on this, this, and this. That also gets sent back to the mothership, meaning the ad network, and which, of course, stores that information for future use. And it asks the ad network, okay, I got a chump here. What ad do I need to show them? And I'm using the word chump, which is inflammatory, deliberately, right? They are not thinking about you as a person. They are thinking about you as a target. So what this means is that ad placement is completely indifferent to the quality of the websites where the ads are being shown. The only thing that ad networks care about is whether a particular ad is likely to get you to click on it and how much they can get paid for placing a particular ad. So if an ad network thinks you're going to click on an ad on a site that is just garbage, right? The ad is going to go on the garbage site, especially if it's really cheap to place there. If you've been wondering why there's so much less journalism, much less good journalism online these days, it's really ad networks. Ad networks don't care how important it is to have good journalism out there. And part of the problem with good journalism is that it can often be rather divisive. And ad networks don't necessarily like that. So they don't care. They don't care. They are happy to place ads on crappy sites in preference to sites built by honorable people and good journalists, right? Ad networks don't care. They are amoral. So with that as background, how, you might be asking, do you build a piece of crap website to sell ad placements against? How do you do it real fast and as cheaply as possible? And you read the title of this talk, so you already know the answer. You use a chatbot to generate sludge to sell ad placements against. Of course you do. Right now, it is free to do that. And if you hang out on Reddit, especially the parts of Reddit that have a lot to do with web industries, the top post that I'm reproducing here is actually from the search engine optimization subreddit. The longer one below is from the main WordPress subreddit. There are several WordPress subreddits right now. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there's a huge thing going on with WordPress. Anyway, you can see this happening. You can see people asking, okay, how do I get in on this gravy train, right? How do I build a cheap, crappy site to sell ads against, right? So I'm going to stop here for a second, partly to admit people. Feel free to pop into chat. Do you have any questions about the web ad industry? I'm not like expert, but I know a few things. If there's anything that I didn't explain clearly and you'd like me to go back to, love to hear about it. Or is there a piece of this that that you think I didn't address at all and you'd like me to address it? So my argument is people are taking advantage of the ad industry to make money by selling ad placements on sites that they make with chatbots. Um, that's what's happening, right? But I don't want to call this taking advantage of the ad industry. That's what the ad industry is set up to do, right? It's a real race to the bottom. Um, so yeah, the ad industry is kind of working as designed here. All right, when I said that web apps are responsible for non-ad websites being up, what do you mean? Oh yeah, that's a good question. What I mean is news websites, many weblogs, recipe blogs, all kinds of the websites that we meet that we go to every day and that we value are paid for by web advertising. Does that help? What I mean by sell ads against, is that part of Heather's question? Maybe. Um, what I mean is you throw up a cheap, crappy website, you populate it with chatbot sludge, and then you say, hey, ad networks, right? Place ads on my website. That's what I mean by sell ads against. Elliot says, I've been adding block lists for AI generated content to my ad blocker. Do you have any suggestions for lists or places to look for compiled lists of domains, et cetera, to block? Yeah, that's a really good question. And I do have in uBlock Origin a list that I know is populated from GitHub. And I would actually have to go into my browser and check that out to find out which list it was, which I've got 6 different things happening on my screen right now, and I'm not going to do that. But yes, what I think I want everybody, not just you, Elliot, to take away from this is that, yes, there are lists so you can block some of this garbage. And as I'm going to say later, it's not just we as web users who are blocking chatbots. A lot of web creators are as well. And I will get into a little bit why that is. Thank you, everybody. These are fantastic questions. Have I cleared stuff up a little bit? Hope so. Throw me an emoji or a reaction. I will see those too. All right, I'll keep going then. So generative AI, which is not the only kind of AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, it's not the only application of this branch of computer science out there by a long shot. But it's the one that's getting a lot of the hype at the moment. So it's what I'm talking about today. There are various subsets of it, many of which you've probably already run into. Large language model based chatbots like ChatGPT and Claude, programming code generators like Copilot, image generators like Midjourney, sound and voice generators, video generators. All of these exist in the world. And the way that they work is you pull together a vast, massive amount of the kind of data that you're hoping to generate, whether that's text, images, video, whatever. More than that, sorry, that's not going to be enough. Even more than that, like seriously, the amounts here are massive. And how do you do this? Mostly, you just grab it off the open web, or at least the accessible web, the web that's available to you. Copyright? Who cares about copyright? Creator wishes? Who cares about creators? We have generative AI to build. Hey, surveillance images or video? Sure. If it works, grab it. What about private or confidential images, like medical images, for example? Yeah. An image data set out of Stanford called Laion, Laion, if you want to look this up, got caught red-handed with somebody's private medical videos. And when they were called on it, they were like, shrug, right? It was there on the open web. Yeah, it was probably a leak, but oh well. We're not actually going to do anything about it. We're not going to retrain our model just because your extremely intimate medical imagery got into it. Lovely people, right? If you're getting the impression that AI people are lovely people, yeah, that's legit. The same model, the Leon model, actually did get taken down, at least temporarily, this time for child sexual abuse material, right? It had to get that bad before they were forced to actually stop and take a look at what they're doing. Heather remarks, seen people online making creative work statements along the line of, I do not consent to this work being fed to generative AI, or do not scrape this work. Does this do anything? No. Um, well, okay. Let me pull that back a little bit. Expressing resistance is valuable. All right. It is good to say these things out loud. But does it accomplish anything legally? Nope. Really, no. I wish it did too, but it kind of doesn't. All right. So you've amassed these giant piles of data, and you feed all of that into basically a thing that creates a black box. And the resulting black box, you can use it to make stuff up in response to prompts. And it's, of course, there are a lot of complexities to this that I'm not talking about today, but that gives you the idea. And one of the things I want you to take away from this is that a chatbot is a make stuff up machine. That is what it is, and that is what it does. It makes stuff up. This is one reason that you never, ever, please do not do this. Use a chatbot as a search engine. It's not a search engine. It is not searching through that huge pile of data to find answers for you. It is making stuff up. All right. Sometimes the stuff it makes up will actually answer your question, and odds are maybe a little bit better than chance, but you can't trust a make stuff up machine. The other thing a chatbot is a honey badger. A chatbot's a honey badger. Honey badgers don't care, and chatbots don't care either. If you're curious about the honey badger thing, it's a very old internet meme. You can probably still look it up. It was a video, so the first place to look is probably YouTube. Diane points out that people are using programs like Glaze to poison images that are scraped and used in AI training. Wondering how helpful that is, but I'm hopeful. Yes, there's a little bit of a Red Queen's race going on here between the AI companies on one hand and the would-be AI poisoners on the other. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the AI companies find a way around it. I think it has certainly succeeded in angering a few of them. Yeah, but yes, there are ways to do that. For those chatbots to cite sources like Perplexity, do you find that to be accurate or not? Or like maybe Darkly a Mirage? Darkly a Mirage, definitely. One thing is that, and I don't know how Perplexity specifically gets around this, but it's also an argument that I want you to know about for not using chatbots to do your homework. Chatbots are very good at making stuff up again, which includes citations. About a year ago, a lot of my reference librarian friends were coming to me or just, chatting and saying, gosh, we are getting just a rash of reference requests to find citations for stuff that doesn't seem to exist. Does anybody know what's going on? And of course, what was going on is that people were asking ChatGPT to cite its sources, and ChatGPT was doing what chatbots do, which is make stuff up. So yes, they will totally make up citations that don't exist. To Emrys's point, however, and in a way, this makes chatbots almost human. citing a source does not mean that you've understood it. Citing a source does not mean that Perplexity is doing anything different than other chatbots as far as making stuff up. And Perplexity, like all of the AI chatbot companies, is not very transparent about, well, partly because there's a lot we don't know about how chatbots work under the hood. They're not very transparent about how their models make decisions about what to say. So just citing a source is, for me, kind of insufficient as a justification for why you're seeing what you're seeing, for what it's worth. Right, so chatbots, honey badgers. When you try to use a chatbot as a search engine, the chatbot doesn't do anything different than what it would normally do. It responds to your search prompt the same way it would to any other prompt, which is making things up, right? And the way that they make things up is taking the text of your prompt, sending it to their tokenizer, which chops it up into little tiny bits, and they pop the resulting tokens into fancy statistics engines. Very interesting data structures, by the way. Neural nets are actually legitimately very cool, with the aim of computing a statistically likely answer. All right, statistically likely. Statistically likely is not the same as accurate, factual, or even reasonable. And emphatically, it is not the same thing as safe. And we've seen in the news examples of this: pizza rock glue, recipes that ask for poisonous ingredients. And remember, chatbot's a honey badger. Chatbot don't care. Just yesterday, 404 Media, another AI generated, please saute the poison mushroom in butter. A little bit of advice dropped. Now, to my knowledge, chatbots haven't killed anybody yet. Not like supposedly self-driving cars, which have killed people. But chatbots have gotten people scammed. And chatbots have gotten people in trouble with the law. Piper got ahead of me on this one. Lawyers have been citing imaginary cases and materials submitted to the court because they're using AI to write their briefs. Hasn't been a disbarment yet, as far as I know, but there have been some very, very angry judges. And angry judges get very, very hilariously sarcastic. So it's worth reading those stories. They're highly amusing. As far as a chatbot killing somebody, frankly, matter of time. It is a matter of time before that happens. Will asks, is it always the case that these chatbots make things up? Because sometimes they also give accurate answers. I think whether or not these chatbots will give accurate answers is largely dependent on the data that they are trained on. Yeah, that's a very good question. Here's the way that I put this in a presentation that I actually gave last week for our continuing education unit. Any of y'all play tabletop role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, World of Darkness, like Vampire Mage, that like any of that stuff? If you do, and if the tabletop role-playing games that you play use dice, right? Usually for role-playing games that use dice, there's a rule that means that no matter how good your character is at things, your character can always fail. In Dungeons and Dragons, it's called rolling a natural one. In Vampire, it's called botching, but there's this rule. If your die rolls are bad enough, you can fail. That's how I think about chatbots. Chatbots can always fail. Chatbots can always botch. That's kind of how make stuff up machines work. And yes, whether they're going to is, at least in part, dependent on the quality of their training data, particularly around whatever the topic, whatever it is you're actually asking them about. But there is always, and I don't think this will ever completely go away, there is always the possibility of a botch. And right now, the botches are not even rare. One source of botches is bias, is even hate. And that's not a thing that a chatbot can care about because a chatbot can't care. It's a honey badger. Now, chatbot companies use model tuning processes after they actually train their model with all of the data. And these processes are designed to try to avoid bias. And the way that they work is by exploiting and abusing labor in low-income countries, by the way, just so you know. So chatbot companies are trying to remove this source of error, but like a bad nail, right? It just keeps popping right back up again. It's basically a cottage industry these days detecting this stuff. Oops, sorry. Somebody just joined and I need to admit them. All righty. So here's where we are. Here's what these things do. Can I say more about labor? Give a source that I can read after. Yeah, hold that thought. I absolutely will. Another thing we're seeing that I was actually asked about, so I'm glad I thought to put this in here, is a lot of web creators, whether they make their living on the web or whether they are just creating for the sake of creating, they're not up for being exploited by AI bros. And so they're blocking as many AI bots as they can. Since I mentioned WordPress earlier, there are a number of WordPress plugins now that purport to block AI bots and update their lists to keep track of the new AI bots because there are always new AI bots. And AI companies are making this worse for themselves, frankly. One, by lying, right? A lot, well, not a lot, but at least some AI bots have been caught trying to pass themselves off as other types of bot. And the other thing that we've seen a couple, three times is crawlers, data grabbers for AI companies that are just so poorly programmed, right? And it's not like programming a web crawler is anything like new. We've had these a long time, but they're just slurping up huge amounts of bandwidth from the websites that they're trying to copy, and to the point where it's actually costing those websites substantial amounts of money. Just to show you how little some of these people care about whom they're exploiting. So yeah, the consent in crisis piece that I've given you the title for here, if you're interested in this and what's happening with it, that is the report that I would recommend that you read. Pop that into Google Scholar, it should take you right there. What some people are doing is blocking all bots, including search engine crawlers. And boy, I understand this because remember how Google is getting into AI? Google is totally getting into AI. So are they repurposing the data that they pull in with the Google bot, the regular Google search engine crawler? Yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. So we're just seeing an epidemic of bot distrust, if you will, on the open web, the creator web these days. And I understand it. But it has implications. It reduces how much good stuff gets into search engines and is there to like combat the sludge a little bit. It also reduces how much good stuff gets into chatbot models, right? Good human created, juicy, informative stuff. The folks who create this stuff are blocking bots with all of their might. And that has some very interesting implications, which I will get into later. But the ultimate result is that the web is drowning in sludge. I did my first lecture about the sludge problem actually in fall last year, and I was kind of winging it a little bit because there wasn't much that we actually knew. I just felt like I could see this coming. But like now we know. Now we know. The web is drowning in sludge. That is why your search results are garbage. This is, of course, hurting the creator web. Um, this is not a large language model thing. This is more an image generator thing. But if you know the Cat and Girl comic at all, it's a lovely little web comic. I love it to pieces. But the creator posted a web comic, and because I want to be respectful, this is just the first panel of a very lengthy comic, entitled "On Being Listed in the Court Document of Artists Whose Work Was Used to Train Midjourney with 4,000 of My Closest Friends," and Willem de Kooning. Great little comic. Definitely check it out. And right, like I've been pointing out that the chatbot companies own a lot of responsibility for this. And the ad companies own a lot of responsibility for this. And even the search engines do, for reasons I will get to in a little bit. But I also want to be fair about this and point out that a lot of people are using this new tool to be jerks, basically. AI-fueled scams and grifting beyond cheating ad networks, which is practically a patriotic duty at this point. So Will asks the question, are there any data privacy and security concerns, such as data breaches with the use of chatbots? Yes. Yes, in fact, there are. There have been several documented cases of people putting confidential company information into chatbot prompts. Chatbot companies retain chatbot prompts and use them to train their next models. And so, yes, there have been cases of breach by prompt. You can find those out there. There have also been cases of, because chatbot's a honey badger, chatbot don't care, companies like waving their confidential information in the breeze, leaving it on the open web, which is terribly unwise and itself a security breach. But the chatbot made it worse because the chatbot then became queryable for confidential information. So yes, those are two examples of data privacy and security problems that have been documented around chatbots. Jesse remarks, it's not clear yet it's possible to adequately secure such data in an LLM. I think that's correct, right? To a model trainer, it's all data. They don't have a sense of confidential versus not. They have no sense of context. So no, they can't distinguish. Machine so-called unlearning is one possible band-aid that could also be used for ill. And in my estimation, again, not an expert, I'm not sure it works. Synthetic data, yeah. There's a lot of research fraud right now in a number of fields from synthetic data. So that makes me raise my shoulders around my ears. But yes, people are talking about it. Do these chatbots have the ability to recognize sarcasm, irony, or humor? No, because they can't recognize anything. They don't think, right? They're not thinking engines. There are people who are hyping them up as being able to think like a human being, but they are not and they cannot. And yes, that has actually been a problem. And like, it's a research area, frankly, trying to figure out how to help a chatbot, help a model distinguish tone of voice, tone of posting, however you want to do it. But bluntly, they're not good at it. They are just not good at it. Right. So people using generative AI for scams, for grifting, for deep fakes, including sexually themed ones, for, oh my gosh, super fake news. And there are some supposedly legitimate news outlets who have been caught doing this. And academic and professional cheating. I wish it weren't happening, but it's happening, including research and scholarly publication fraud. And I want you to understand the lie here. The lie is, I thought about this, I did this work, I created this. And that's a lie. And it matters. Do the chatbot companies know about this? Yeah, of course they do. Do they care? No, they do not. But it's up to us, right? We can't expect the chatbot companies to be daddy and mommy, right? Slapping our hands when we do the bad thing. It is up to us. If we're going to use these things at all, and I frankly do not, we need to use them not just to be liars, grifters, and cheats. We need to be better people than that. All right. So I've talked about the ad industry. I've talked about generative AI. I'm going to talk briefly about search engine optimization, SEO, which boiled down to its essentials is how do you get a website to rank highly for a particular query that is the main topic, let's say, of your website. And this used to be about making a good, useful, and accessible website. I used to teach SEO proudly. I don't anymore because SEO is about trying to surface from the sludge, which means a lot of really sketchy, nasty web writing practices that I don't love and that are, again, degrading all of our search results. Now, back in the day, we used to be able to trust Google to take sketchiness out of its search index. If you were building a content farm, a low quality website, if your SEO was slimy and unethical, if you were using deceptive design techniques, you could expect Google to punish you, right? Your site would go down in Google results or even possibly be kicked out. That's not happening anymore. And it's not only not happening in Google, it's not happening with the Common Crawl, which a lot of Google competitors use. So why not? Why is this not happening? First reason, chatbots absolutely can create sludge that they cannot reliably distinguish from non-sludge. So automatedly desludging a search engine, pulling out all of the sludge is difficult and it may actually be impossible. I hope this didn't happen to any of you, but if any of you fell afoul of an AI detection tool in your academic work, I'm sorry, because those things are garbage and they don't work. A number of instructors, fortunately not here where I am, have just embarrassed themselves and they have actually harmed students by taking AI detection tools just way too seriously. So reason two, Google is the biggest advertiser on the entire web. So all of these sludge websites make Google ad money. Google, as it happens, is a web advertising and user surveillance company that happens to run a search engine. And remember what I said about the web advertising industry. So Google has massive conflicts of interest. Its search engine business conflicts with its web ad business, its browser and mobile business, its surveillance businesses, it has more than one, and its nebulous AI business. And it has decided that search and browser are losing. If your browser is Google Chrome, it's a really good time to audition some alternatives. I suggest LibreWolf. We're seeing a lot of search engine regressions, and regression is a term of art in computer science, software development. It means a change that either damages functionality or removes functionality that's useful. Now, back in the day, I used to teach advanced Googling because there were lots of useful little advanced search features. Date restrictions, phrase searching, requiring certain words, sometimes in close proximity to other words. There were lots of really cool things you could do to make your search more precise. I can't teach this anymore because those features either aren't there anymore or they don't work. It has not always been this way. And so how do search engines justify this? Well, people don't use those features. What? I'm a librarian, so I'm not people. Give me a break. And the other reason I think is that even software developers who really should know better are really, really gullible about all of this constellation of hype right now. They think that an AI search aid, however you want to phrase it, replaces user-side precision enhancing advanced search features. In librarianship, we're having to lean really hard on our vendors right now because they're putting this AI slop in their tools and taking away the stuff that we used to use to surface the good stuff out of the sea of sludge. Here's where we're at. We got a sea of sludge, and our tools for finding non-sludge in the sea are getting worse. So that's great. What do we do now? We take arms. We take arms against this sea of chatbot sludge. One thing that many searchers do is limit their searches to sites that are still mostly human. If you know people or you are a person who will add Reddit to the end of a search because you want Reddit search results because those are normally written by people, sensible, I get it. But there are a couple of problems with it. Even that is not working as well as it used to. Problem number one is the AI companies exploit the open web, including social media like Reddit, for training data. A lot of human interaction is going, ew, I don't want any part of this. I'm going to go to a place where the AI folks cannot get at me. So more private and confidential spaces, although the degree of privacy is doubtful. I'm thinking of places like Slack and Discord, not super private. Another problem is that we're seeing the big generative AI companies kind of sectioning off the web. Google, for example, bought sole access to Reddit for its AI training purposes, denying that access to others. And I expect that to harm not just search results, but AI models. Another thing we can do as people is rely on curated information aggregations that have less sludge in them, such as library-provided databases, right? For those of us who are in this for librarianship, this is opportunity knocking if we know how to take advantage of it. And the last thing we can do is give up, right? We can give up on the open web because it's not reliable anymore. It's choked with sludge, and its search engines aren't really helpful either. And I am sad about this. As you've probably been able to tell, I'm also pretty angry about this. I love the web. I grew up with the web. This is an awful way for a phenomenal technology to die. But I see opportunity in it for librarians and librarianship. Can't lie about that. One thing I think the information professions can and should do is keep our own house clean. iSchools and the information professions are not immune to all of this hype swirling around generative AI, and we need to help one another resist that. So back in May, the National Archives and Records Administration, Washington, D.C., told its employees to stop using ChatGPT precisely because of a problem that's already come up in chat. There was significant risk of leaking confidential information, which we know has actually happened. Then, not even 6 months later, NARA announces that they're going with Google to implement a reference chatbot. And I just don't have words. I do not have words for how misguided and embarrassing I find this. And I want to say, by the way, that the NARA person who's pushing this has never been an actual archivist or records manager. All right, they're totally coming out of that computer science view of the universe. But be that as it may, this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing for the information professions. It's embarrassing for me as an information educator. And I confidently predict that if this goes through, it will be embarrassing for NARA within hours or at most days of letting a make stuff up machine go live as a reference archivist. In the information professions, we do not roll dice with our patrons' questions. ever. That is not ethical. And this means we do not use make stuff up machines whenever accuracy or currency or trust are important to our work, which in my opinion is pretty much always. I think also we need to remain undazzled by the hype. Now, I am older than dirt. I have seen a lot of hype cycles turn into nothing or next thing too. I lived through the dot-com boom, y'all. So I am telling you right now, generative AI specifically is a bubble. It is a mania. It is extraordinary popular delusions in the madness of crowds. All right. And perfectly happy to see this belief of mine tested. Come back in 3 years or so. Let's talk. Oops. Skipping slides again. Sorry about that. Another thing we can do as information professionals is explain the costs out loud. The labor costs and the costs to the folks that we serve. Eating disorder helpline disables chatbot for harmful responses. I'm not going to talk about what they were. I bet you can imagine. After firing human staff, and this isn't the only example. There have been a number of mental health chatbots that have done the same awful thing to people who are in crisis, and it's not okay. Back to Emrys's question about labor ethics. This is from Time Magazine, that middle one. OpenAI used Kenyan workers on less than $2 an hour to make ChatGPT less toxic, basically by forcing them to sort through the absolute dregs of human expression. All right, the worst bias, the worst hate, the most awful things. So they're paying people less than $2 an hour to look through that stuff in order to keep it out of the chatbot responses. I don't know what to say about that. Ethical horror. And the environmental impacts of generative AI. An industry Google is getting into right now is actually nuclear energy. Why? Because they can't power their chatbot training. Are we not burning the world fast enough, people? We can show folks how to do better. In school and academic librarianship, the buzzword, the jargon term, the term of art for this is information literacy or information literacy instruction. The Association for College and Research Libraries has an entire framework, the ACRL framework for information literacy instruction. I'm going to recommend a couple of books. The one book that all of you should have if you care about truth, I'm really serious about this, is a book called Verified by Caulfield and Weinberg. Lovely, lovely little book. I really adore it to pieces. A book that I'm reading right now and like a lot is AI Snake Oil, Narayanan and Kapoor. Terrific book. Chapter 7 is a wallop. I'm halfway through it right now. Is absolutely amazing. But if for kind of contextualizing and situating and critically thinking about all of these hype cycles, AI Snake Oil, fantastic book. I really do recommend it. And there's another one that's coming out next year that I am definitely going to read. It will be called The AI Con, and it is by Dr. Emily Bender of Stochastic Parrots fame and Dr. Alex Hanna, who, by the way, bit of trivia for you, is actually a UW-Madison PhD alum, though not in the I school. She got her degree in sociology. Kind of bleak. Sorry about that. So does this have to happen? Is the web really going to die? Can we desludge it? Is there hope? No, the web doesn't have to die. Possibly it can be desludged, and definitely there is hope. Sam Altman, OpenAI, for example, needs to make money at some point. He's currently running ChatGPT as a hype engine and a loss leader. And my question is, how long can he do that? Right? At some point, he's got to make money somehow. And is this going to get easier or harder as large language models, as chatbots, keep falling all over themselves in public? But here's the key one for me, and for us today. Will the use payments he's inevitably going to have to demand, I don't know how else he's going to make money, right? Suddenly make the business model of building a crap website with a chatbot in order to place ads on it, is it going to make that model uneconomic? Is it going to make it not work anymore? I hope so. I definitely think that's at least a possibility. Data privacy law, especially in the European Union, offers some hope here. So does copyright law. A number of lawsuits are underway. In the meantime, for us as information professionals, whatever our definition of digital literacy is, I think we have to include coping with sludge as part of it. But there's another reason to expect desludgification. That's the idea that I want to leave you with. General purpose chatbots, large language models, are trained on the open web on the assumption that that web is being written by actual human beings. As chatbot sludge takes over the web, right? The only way that chatbot builders are going to be able to train new chatbots is by absorbing that sludge into their models, basically training their new chatbots on the sludge created by their old chatbots. Because again, machine learning cannot reliably tell the difference between human created output and chatbot sludge. Now, a very interesting thing happens, at least sometimes, when you do this. If you train a large language model on its own output, it gets very, very bad very, very fast. And if you want to look this up, the phrase to search, I would search either Archive or Google Scholar on this, is model collapse. So what that means is even the worst of the sludge meisters will have incentive to develop better tools for separating human writing from chatbot sludge, and to not let themselves be used the way they have been for the further ensludgification of the web. So as bad as things are right now, I really do, honest, I am not just saying this, I do have hope. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. You can get in touch with me, email on the screen. Also wanted to introduce you kind of in absentia to our two graduate coordinators. For the MS in information, that's Jenny Greiber. And for the master's in library and information studies, that is Tanya Hendricks-Cobb. All right, we have a couple minutes for questions. I do want to end a few minutes early so you can all head off to the next talk. How do we make search engines rank higher than chatbots? I think part of the way we do that, Will, is by piercing the hype. I really do think that's important. And that's part of the reason I think it's important when people protest the use of their materials to train chatbots. The more that we say chatbots ain't all that, the more likely it is that chatbots start behaving more responsibly, or we all discover that this was a bad idea to begin with from the get-go, and we kind of wave chatbots goodbye. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time today. And I thank you for coming to INFOcon, and I wish you good luck getting to your next session.